Good morning, folks. We're going to be planting bulbs today, and this is not exactly the place that I wanted to plant them, but let me take you back for a minute. If you recall, not too long ago, we rolled out this wildflower sod. It looks pretty good, so if you haven't seen that video, I'll link to it. But you can see that it's already started to freshen up. I've been watering it every day. You can see a lot of the grasses and the coreopsis and other plants that are coming up, the forbs and the grasses here. And initially I wanted to throw bulbs under this carpet. It would have to be small bulbs, and I realize now that the Camassia that I'm getting, at least the Pacific Northwest native Camassia, the Lectliana cerulea, are just a little bit too large. We would have really had to drill them in. The tulips are quite small, so I could still probably do that. But that was my plan. My initial plan was to toss them under, then get the wildflower sod on top. But best laid plans sometimes don't work out, so I needed a plan B because this wildflower sod came in earlier than the bulbs and we just needed to get it done. And I'm glad we did. I think it looks great. It hasn't been raining, but I've been watering it every day and it started to integrate really nicely. So that brings me to plan B. Now, if you recall, in this Fenceline area, I planted a lot of tulips last year. Last fall, I planted around 4,000 tulips. I had maybe over 100 different varieties of tulips. I'm guessing that some of them will perennialize, but most of them won't. So I wasn't planning on doing a lot of tulips in this Fenceline area, but I have all these bulbs now, and most of them, like I said, are Camassia. So let me show you how big the Camassia are so you can get an idea. Our native Camassia, which is called Psiloides, is so much smaller than this as well. And I did order some of those, and I'll probably still stick those into the meadow. I'll probably dibble them in. So I got a dibble from my friend. This is what it looks like. And you could just like dibble them in like this and drop in a tulip or a small Camassia bulb. But these are quite meaty, and I have a number of Camassia that are planted in here. What I've been trying to achieve with this garden, since it only got in last year, is some blooms between mid-June and late August. Once that flush of tulips came up, it was beautiful. It really crescendoed in May, but then the Camassia, which I have probably maybe 40, 50, 60 Camassia in here, looked beautiful, but it lasted for about 2 weeks in early June. And then by mid-June, almost nothing came up. I didn't have enough perennials in here. The dahlias, which look great now, only started to come up maybe last month. I would say late August. We're now in early October now. So you could see that they're in all their full glory. And if we get a frost in the next week or two, then it'll be bye-bye dahlias. But I started planting other things in here, like this achillea, which you could see is that nice winey red. Almost a little magenta tone in there. So that's going to start to spread in June and July. We have some more here. You can see the geraniums are blooming, but they're starting to spread. I also planted some very small coreopsis red satin, so that will start to billow out a little bit and give some color. But I'm planting the Camassia and tulips. It'll be for that May-June flush, and then the perennials will hopefully take over. And I'm also going to be doing alliums in here because the alliums really last well from June and July, so that'll give a nice show right after all of these guys. But like I said, best laid plans. I would have really loved to plant them in the meadow sod. I should say that I got these all at Color Blends. Oh, you're definitely going to be wearing that. Growing bulbs in the natural garden. Cool. This would be great. And Color Blends sells their bulbs at wholesale prices, which is great. People always ask me, where do you get some of the most affordable bulbs? Well, Color Blends is a place, and actually, if you recall last year, I was looking for a tulip called Yume no Murasaki, which was like this purple dream tulip. Very challenging to find, and I found it at Color Blends, and that turned out to be one of my favorite tulips. Now, I don't know if it'll perennialize, probably not, I haven't bought any this year, but Color Blends is a place where I found that. And not only that, from the name, you could probably intuit that Color Blends works with different colors of tulips. So they have really nice mixes. They pre-mix them so that the colors come up at the same time. You know, last year when I was planting over 100 varieties of tulips, I was just confident because there's so many varieties that we'd have a show pretty much from April through May. And we did, and like I said, they crescendoed in May, but they're all coming up at different times. But if you're only going to go with 2 or 3 varieties of tulips, you may want them to come up all at the same time. So if you want the purples and whites together, you better get tulips that will flush at the same time. So that's what Color Blends is really known for, is like making those mixes so it looks really great and gives you quite a show. These are tulips that should perennialize, and these are more based on species tulips. So some of the flouncier, you know, some would say kind of more showy varieties of tulips have been bred so much that they don't often perennialize. So these should perennialize for at least, you know, 1 to 3 years afterwards. And they might slow down some, but you could always like take in, you know, 20% more and start planting them in. And I really like the look of the Tulipa acuminata, and I was hoping that it would come up with the Camassia. Tulipa acuminata is another species tulip. It has this like fiery, it looks like a little flame, and they're red and yellow. But what I found out last year, at least in our zone here in zone 5, 6 in the Finger Lakes region of New York, the acuminata came up earlier than all the Camassia. And this is called Tubergen's Gem. And they're very small, and they have yellow with red, and they bloom from mid to late season, and the Camassia bloom late season. So I'm hoping that these will correspond with one another. And as you could probably tell from these small little bulbs, these are a lot smaller. So the Camassia lecliana will get maybe about 2 to 3 feet tall, and these will get about 1 foot tall. So it'll at least hide some of the grassy foliage of the Camassia. I have another one as well. Yes, the Tinka tulips. And these are yellow with red, but it's like a pale yellow, like a buttery yellow. These are also mid to late, and they look similar to the Tubergen's Gem, but we're gonna go for these because I don't necessarily wanna be planting tulips every single year. I'd like some to actually perennialize, and then I could focus on other gardens. I think that's the benefit of plant things that perennialize. I'm just gonna mix these in and do what I did last time, which is kind of toss them around. And one of the things that I did here is I actually weeded this whole bed. So there's still got weeds in it, but the ground ivy was intense. So I basically took this, I'll show you, because I didn't get it all around the edges. And if somebody has a great idea, basically this is a constant weed edge. So on the other side of this fence, if somebody has a nice idea that looks nice, that is quite affordable, that I could put along the edge, maybe even just 1 foot up. And because this ground ivy, if you could see here, runs its little rhizomes or stolons and really takes over the bed. And I couldn't really quite see where I could plant because I didn't know where I planted my small little plugs and where this was. And so you could see that around the edges, I still have quite a lot of work. And you know, honestly, I really don't mind this ivy so much. It's a great ground cover. It is considered, I would say, invasive, but the bees love it, which is probably part of the reason why it spread so well. But I needed to clear this ground because if I was to plant any kind of bulbs, I needed to know where I could plant them. All right, so enough talking and more doing. Now when you're placing bulbs in the ground, you're gonna wanna go at least 2 to 3 times as deep as the bulb. So the Camassia are gonna go in much deeper than the tulips. But if you have a lot of critters, which we do, you may want to put even the tulips a little bit deeper as well. See, here's a tulip from last year. And this actually looks pretty good. It's not rotting or anything like that, but I need to get these dug back in. I took out, the problem with the ground ivy too is that I took out quite a bit of soil because it really sticks to these, there's quite a lot of wood chips, especially here. But I put a lot of that espoma soil as well that I had. And I'm just gonna, you see this? This is the root if you want. The bulb will find its way up, but I'm just gonna bury it like that. And I'll probably come in here with another layer of soil. So this will be my project today. We have probably close to 3,000 of these. Look at all these tulips that I'm also digging up, so you can see that there definitely will be tulips next year if these don't rot out in the winter months. Some really interesting stinkhorns right here. I've been noticing for the last month or so they've been growing, and the flies seem to be very attracted to them. I've had to dig them up because I'm planting bulbs, but they're pretty cool to see in the garden, I have to admit. I'm hitting some of the native soil down there too. But I could probably do with another couple inches of substrate on here as well, just to protect these over the winter months. And bulbs give the promise of a beautiful garden in the future. So we're planting these now, and for those who haven't planted bulbs before, they will come up in the springtime. Like I said, here it would be May and early June. May for the tulips and early June for the Camassia. All right, I'll continue to plant these up, and then we'll check back in May and June to see what the garden looks like. I'm guessing it'll look a little different than what we had last year, but that is the pleasure of gardening, is seeing how it changes over the course of many seasons. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
We're going to be working in the garden pretty much every day this month before winter hits, so stay tuned here for more episodes. And be sure to check out Color Blends for their wide selection of bulbs and blends over at colorblends.com. We'll see you in the next episode.